Ben. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 19th, 2023. I have a sponsor. I sponsor other guys. I had the privilege this last year to serve as the outreach chair for New Jersey Young People's, and our bid for EC, as Angel mentioned. And it's funny, right? Right before Angel even introduced me, I'm sitting here at my desk, the same desk I sat at on the event subco, in probably the same hoodie with the hood up. It's just funny to me, right? But there's so many things I'd like to talk about as it relates to like just my overall experience. But with 20 minutes, I'll try to keep it as brief and as general as possible. So I grew up in a household with two older brothers, a grandma in the house, and my mom and dad. And I think my first symptoms of alcoholism, I refer to this all the time, is so my oldest brother, vicious heroin addict. My middle brother, straight A student, super good kid, always went to school, didn't really do much else. And I never really felt as cool as my oldest brother or as good as my middle brother. And there were a lot of things in childhood that I could sit and stir about too, about like the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the sexual abuse. None of that made me an alcoholic. None of that is what led me to hurt other people. None of that is what contributed to really any of what I did. But so time goes on, my parents get divorced at a young age, my grandma passes away, and I get kicked out by my dad. I'm around 16, and like the beautiful thing about divorced parents is I could call mom and say, hey, mom, listen to what dad did. And I moved in with my mom for a brief stint, nothing more than a month. And a big part of my story, I should back up a second. So the first time I used was with my older brother, and I chased this ideal of him and what cool was to me for a really long time, right? So I smoked weed with my brother. I was probably like 9. It scared the hell out of me. I didn't have some kind of like white light experience. But 3 or 4 years later, I started to buy weed off kids on the school bus. Sorry, my dog's being really annoying. And I just felt like that sense of ease and comfort the book talks about, right? And it started off super innocent. We would smoke weed in the woods after school. Car, hey. She just ate her dinner finally, so she's expecting a treat. But we would just smoke weed in the woods, and like all was fun for a time. And then I started to pick up other things, just like my brother did, and things devolved. Like my relationship with my family devolved. My brother started to see me just like he saw our oldest brother, right? I became quickly abusive in my household, verbally and physically, towards my older brother, and aggressive towards my father. And we butted heads for a long time. So that's when he kicked me out. I moved in with my mom, and I had met this girl, right? Like I was with my mom for maybe 3 weeks by the time I knew this girl, and she kicked me out maybe a week after that. And my friends joke all the time that I was a hobosexual, right? So like I would meet these girls and I needed a place to stay. So like we fell in love and we were going to get married, and that's what it was. So at 17 years old, I moved in full time with my girlfriend, her 10-year-old brother, her single mom, and her like 24-year-old sister. And a couple months into that, her dad was one of us. He died as a direct result to this disease. And I just kept going on. Right. And I think at a certain point, when I looked back, when I finally got sober, I saw that I had all these examples in front of me. I had my brother's experience in front of me. I had this girl's father's experience in front of me. And if even an ounce of me was a regular person or could manage my use, like I would have been able to moderate or cut back or stop. And there was just not even a thought about that in my head after I had these great examples. So I'm there until I'm 20 years old, and I'm falling out in this girl's bathroom, and she kicks me out. And a large part of what my mentality was back then was this victim thing. It was everybody else was doing this to me. I'm a victim of my circumstances. If only you knew how bad I was hurting. And so she kicked me out. I moved in with my friend, and I had a brief time where I was able to put some substances down and get some material things that led me to think I was doing well in my life. Right? I had a really nice job, apartment, bought a new car, had a girl, like everything on paper. I was able to call my family and say, look, I'm doing well. Right. And every time they would come see me, or I'd try to have those like dinners with my dad or breakfast with my mom, arguments would break out. Right. And like my dad would say this thing all the time to me when I was a kid, and I didn't really realize it until I got sober. But if I'm having problems with all my relationships, like I'm the common denominator in that, right? And I just kind of refused to accept it for a long time. So I take this job traveling for work. I took a project manager position, and it brought me to Ohio, brought me to Kentucky, up and down Pennsylvania, and we're at the Penn State store, and I meet this girl, and my lease is coming up on my apartment, and I decide that I'm gonna crash with her. I'm not working 5 days out of the month, maybe, so that when I'm not on a project, I'll just stay with her. I don't have to pay my rent. And another relationship that didn't last long or work out well, right? I was actively, arousing jealousy, all the other things our literature talks about we do in relationships, because I just wanted to, like, in my sick way, protect the safe space I thought I had been given. Um, so I go from there to another girl's house back in my mom's town, and I stay there for a little while, and she has to move to Florida for school, and she's willing to take me with her, and I go with her. And this is where, like, my drinking and my usage assumed way more serious proportions from when I was 20 years old and I left that girl's house. And, like, I remember from when I got kicked out of my first girlfriend's house, I came to the belief, like, for the next 2 years that I could manage, right? Like, the vision of an addict or an alcoholic I had growing up was very much my brother, right? Who was physically abusive, sexually abusive, emotionally abusive, and a vicious heroin addict. So if I wasn't doing what he did, I didn't classify myself as an addict or an alcoholic, right? I really had no clue what it was I suffered from. And I picked up a bottle and everything else along the way. And it brought me to a point where that girl in Florida at 21, 22 decided to have an honest conversation with me that just said, like, look, dude, you're not well. And I can't help you get well. I've tried everything I can. It's hurting me. Right. And I think when I look back today, all I really see is the damage I caused to these people's lives and how I latched on because I really had no sense of, like, safety or direction within myself, right? And so I walk into my first real treatment center at 23 years old after I end up at some other random girl's apartment, and I wake up one morning, and I say this every time I speak because somebody said it in a meeting and it just hit me. The most common word human beings end up using for God is just something, right? Like, something woke me up that morning and brought me to the mirror. And I got honest with myself for a brief moment. And then something told me to call my aunt. And I called my aunt. She answered on, like, the second ring. And I broke down. She helped me get into treatment 3 days later. I called her on the 18th. She picked me up on February 19th. That's my first day sober. And she got me a bed in treatment on the 22nd. So from there, I remember just walking into the treatment center and feeling this massive, like, sigh of relief. Like, since I was 16 years old, I had been running and using people just to be able to, like, feel like I had a sense of safety. So I get there, and I'm really willing, right? Like, I recognize how, for lack of a better term, fucked I am. And AA starts to come in every Sunday, and I connect with those guys, right? But you take my drink away, you take the drug away, you take the girls away for the first time in my life, and I'm also scratching to fill that void any way I can, right? So this girl comes into the treatment center, we're in love, we're gonna move to Florida and, like, stay sober forever, and everything's gonna go great. And, like, the one suggestion I always give guys in the treatment center when I go is just be honest and practice while you're here, right? Like, when AA would come in, I would shoot my hand up in the AA meetings and say, like, me and this girl are going to go to Florida and it's going to be awesome. And they would come up to me after and be like, hey, you're a fucking idiot. Like, this is not going to work, right? And, like, if you guys are anything like me on this call, you come up to me that way, I'm not listening to you. More motivation for me to go and, like, try to prove you wrong. It's just like the sick, stubborn, cocky alcoholic I am, and the person that I was at 23 even more so. But this one guy comes up to me before we get discharged and go to Florida, and he just writes his phone number on a napkin. And in a really loving way, this guy just says, dude, you get into any trouble, you just call me, and I'll answer. So with the napkin in my pocket, we go to Florida, and I wore that jacket everywhere we went for the 4 days because I kept that napkin in my pocket. And she started using, right, and, like, that napkin operated as my first form of a higher power, right? Like, that napkin for those 4 days is what came between me and a drink. in a sense, right? Like somebody working their 12 step and simply just offering me that out kept me from picking back up, and who knows where I'd be. So I come back, I go to my aunt's house with my tail between my legs, and I say, I messed up. I fucked up. And I probably shouldn't be cursing if this is being recorded. I'm just not good at that. But she lets me back in the house. She doesn't lecture me. She lets me go to sleep. She's a real old Italian woman. And then she wakes me up at around 5 o'clock at night. So I got home. We drove through Thursday night. I got home on Friday morning. That H&I group that came into my treatment center had a meeting 15 minutes from where my aunt lived on Friday nights at 8:30. So she woke me up at 5 o'clock at night. She said, you got 90 days to get your shit together, dude. Or like, you're out of a place to live. And so I don't know if what I acted out of when I went to that meeting was desperation to keep my place of living, or genuinely like understanding how fucked I was, right? So I go I go to this meeting, and there's 115 people there, and I'm ridiculously overwhelmed. And I just grabbed this guy that I think I saw in my treatment center, and I asked him to get me a sponsor. And the next 4 months, I really just spent following these guys everywhere they went, going to meetings. Super awkward to do as a newcomer, to like text somebody you don't know, and you're like, hey, where are you going tonight, and can I meet you there? But I did it for like 4 months straight, and I went through my steps with my first sponsor, and I started sponsoring other men in this program. And a lot of what it looked like was just going to a meeting every day, going to a bowling alley, going to a diner, talking to a new guy, giving people a ride home. They told me early on, like, if I wanted to build self-esteem, I had to do esteemable shit. Like, I just had to do good stuff for another person and not really complicate the rest of it. So reluctantly and begrudgingly, if somebody asked me for a ride home, I just did it, right? Like something switched where I felt fortunate to be able to take them home. And through that step process, the initial time, all I really got was relief from the obsession to pick back up again, right? I didn't get this profound change in my character. I didn't get this profound selflessness. Like, it just didn't come to me my first time through the steps. I just simply didn't want to get high anymore, and I didn't think about it. So as time went on, I spent my first year very similarly, just taking guys through the book, showing up to meetings, showing up to H&I commitments, and just like basically doing what I was told. And then I hit like a year sober, and I was at this desk actually, and I like just looked up, and I was like, God, like this can't be it for my entire life. I can't do it. I can't go to bowling alleys as a 24-year-old and hit meetings with all. I just can't do it for the rest of my life. And my brother ended up texting me this random guy's number who I've never spoken to before. My brother's sober now, by the way. I didn't mention that. And he's got like 8 or 9 years sober today. He sends me this guy's number. He goes, call him, tell him you're my little brother and that you want to get involved in whatever he's doing. And I text my brother back. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And he refused to tell me, but I picked up the phone, and the next day the guy called me back, and he was involved in New Jersey Young People's. I had no idea what it was. I had no clue what it was. But he told me about a business meeting, and he made it sound exciting, right? And, like, at another pivotal point, I think God showed up and gave me exactly what I needed, right? Like, I was kicked out of my mom's house. That girl and those 3 years were exactly what I needed. I had to leave from there. Staying at my friend's house was exactly what I needed. I had my own time, and it was exactly what I needed. When I look back, like, God never provides anything other than what I need when I need it. So I show up to this business meeting, and like my favorite part about this is I was able to call all the people in my network. I don't know about you guys, but they told me my whole first year that I didn't have a choice. They're like, you're doing this and you don't have a choice. So I got to call all of these guys and said, you're coming with me to this random dude's house for a business meeting and you don't have a choice. And so like all of them, we showed up like 9 or 10 people deep at this random guy's house in North Jersey. And I was introduced to what service looked like on a young people's scale outside of just the home group level, area level, intergroup level service. And it lit a fire back under me for what AA is. And so we bid for EC. I joined in February. We went in April. It was my first convention. Fun time. I still had a lot of defects that I acted out on. I still had not gone through the work a second time. But like the most beautiful thing, I try to always mention this, the most beautiful thing Young People Service got me was a service sponsor and my second time through the work, right? So I get plugged in with a service sponsor because I feel the need to go through the traditions. And I'm sitting with him, and he makes me do a whole nother 4 step. We had to do a 1 through 9 in front of a pancake house in Princeton. And there was a lot of stuff like the sexual abuse I mentioned that I just didn't talk about it on my first fourth step. It just wasn't like prevalent. It wasn't in the front of my mind. Like it was in a box somewhere. And like it had come up in conversation about 2 days prior to me meeting with this guy. And I had one of the most freeing experiences with a complete stranger when my intention was to go through the traditions. But again, like God had other plans for what that was supposed to be. And we sat outside a pancake house in Princeton, New Jersey for 5 or 6 hours. I'm crying half the time. We're doing a third step prayer on our knees in front of 60 people. We're doing a 7-step prayer on our knees in front of like 80 people by that time. And it was just like a very humbling experience. And I get back to my car, and this is a lot of stuff I haven't faced ever in my life, right? And I'm just like, this is how I see God show up in my life a lot too. So I'm like crying in my car, and I got 2 parking tickets. If any of you have ever been to Princeton, New Jersey, it's just what happens when you go there. And I'm just like crying in my car, and this old woman knocks on my window, and I lower my window, and she just tells me to cheer up and that I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to or not. Right. And like old Ben is snapping at this lady. But instead, I kind of saw God in it and got grateful quickly and went to a speaking commitment, and all was well. So from there, right, I continued to do the young people service. I continued to serve in my area. I was asked to form a young people's committee for my intergroup, which I've had the pleasure of doing with all the people I got sober. It's been extremely stressful, but extremely important for the community itself around here. And then, as my second year has gone on, hard stuff in life has happened, and I've been able to get through it sober. Like there are times that I've experienced where like I don't really feel God super closely, but I feel super connected to all of you. Right. And like there are other moments where I feel far away from everybody and super close to God, but I'm never without one or the other. Right. And over the last 6 months, there have been some major changes in my life and a lot of stuff that has happened that has kind of, and it's on me, right? Like I've isolated myself from what always worked, from just going to the meetings, doing the H&I commitments, sponsoring guys, all that sort of basic home group level stuff. I got overwhelmed with all the other service commitments I had. I started pouring into a bunch of different things. And then when I've come back to the basics, right, it's like, dude, I hate when people say this at meetings, but it's like so true, and they say it all the time, is if I feel far away from God, I have to ask myself who moved, right? Like God's never the one who fixates himself away from me, right? It's me who's skipping out on my meditations. It's me who's praying half-heartedly. I don't know, but I've been able to have multiple different experiences in this program, and I can't really attribute it to anything that I've ever done, right? Like all I've really ever done in this program is get dressed and show up at the meeting and like ask my sponsor what the hell to do. And I'm still just as clueless as I was when I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I always like expect myself to have some profound knowledge or some profound message when I speak anywhere. But it's just not what it is, right? Like I'm just another sick alcoholic who shows up at meetings, who shows up at a committee and like tries to serve the best I can, and somebody who's just trying to like seek God and find him in every aspect of my life. That's all I got. I know I rambled, I talked very quickly, and I was all over the place, but I think the topic I've been thinking about a lot will be step 11,